Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiyeh bidvarai.
Amen.
Okay, good morning. Welcome back to Yehuda. It's great to have you back with us properly, feeling better. B'ezras Hashem, and a huge welcome to Reb Shimon, all the way from Beijing, China, for joining us this morning. It's an incredible simcha to have you with us, and to everybody else for joining us. B'ezras Hashem, today's shiur is sponsored as a schus for, we'll say, Klal Yisrael, by Eli Wolbram of 92ndnach.com, also sponsored by Zev Klein Le'ilin Ishmael, his parents, Rivka Bryndel Bas Tzvi Simcha and Ya'akov ben Yisha'yahu, and also sponsored anonymously b'schus Shidduchim for Klal Yisrael singles. B'ezras Hashem, we should only hear simchas and the schus of our learning together today. B'siyata d'shmaya. Okay, so B'ezras Hashem, we jump back in to Likutei Moharan. We are beginning a brand new teaching today, Torah and Gimmel. Torah and Gimmel is one of my favorite teachings in the sefer. It's an extraordinary revelation. It's not that long, but it's packed. It's almost like a whole derech, and there are lashonos here that you find that you don't really find in the rest of the sefer. So it's a phenomenal and quite a well-known teaching to those who have the privilege of studying the sefer. And so let's jump into it together, B'ezras Hashem. So the Rebbe begins with, again, a quote-unquote random pasuk, because we're at the point in the sefer now where, like we said, we're out in the open seas, and he's not following any specific series of Aggadic Gemaras. Now it's psukim. I believe very strongly that there is an order. Reb Nosson put the Torahs in an order, and we have to do the work of being able to excavate the common theme that runs throughout all the lessons, which we've been doing since the beginning, and we will, B'ezras Hashem, continue to do even now in this new segment of the sefer. But it begins with the pasuk Tehillim, Mia ish chafetz chaim, who is the person who desires life? Oyev yamim. Okay, leave it. It's okay.
Did you have a recording for the audio?
No, it's fine. We have shkayach. Oyev yamim liras taiv, who loves days liras taiv, to seek goodness. A famous, well-known pasuk. Nitzar l'shem chameira goes on to say, everybody knows the famous medrash of the person running around who wants life, right? And he uses these psukim to say, you have to guard your lips and the way that we speak. But the Rebbe focuses on just this part of that formulation, Mi ha'ish chafetz chaim, oyhev yamim liras taiv. What does this mean? So the Heilige Rebbe says like this, Schus yagun aleinu, haklal hu. The klal is as follows. Shetzarech levakesh shalom. A person has to seek peace. A peace occurs on many different layers and levels. Number one, she is shalom bein Yisrael. There should be peace between people. A person has to be a mevakesh, like it says about Aaron, right? Oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. He didn't just encounter peace when he found peace. He was mevakesh shalom. He sought peace. That was a value that he sought to create. As we famously know, Aaron would go to one person, tell him the other person wants to make shalom, would go to the other person, he wants to make shalom. He would create shalom. That's called mevakesh shalom. She is shalom bein Yisrael, but perhaps more importantly, from the standpoint of hierarchy, because it comes first, is she is shalom l'chol adam b'midaisav. A person has to have shalom within themselves, within their own inner world. Hainu, what is this? So what does this mean? That the person should have peace within himself. Hainu, in other words, that there should be no chilek between the stimuli that a person encounters as catalysts for midas within external circumstances. That's called ma'iraisav. And midaisav, which is his internal reactions, or hopefully responses, like we learned in a previous Torah about rising out of the medama reactivity and rising into a place of responsiveness where a person can pause and a person can interact with what's going on instead of just like an animal, reacting. But b'midaisav, there's shalom, which means shalom yi'leichilik bein betivu bein ba'aku. The Rebbe uses Aramaic terminology for positive circumstances and negative circumstances. There shouldn't be difference to the person whether they're experiencing something that is overtly good or whether they're experiencing something that is overtly aku, which is negative. Tamid yimtzei by Hashem Yisbarach. A person is constantly able to find HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that circumstance. Hainu, ba'Hashem halal davar. Be'elikim ahalal davar. Like David HaMelech says in Tehillim famously, whether it's Yud Kei Vav Kei, Midas HaChesed, expansivity, Hispashtus, halal davar. I'm able to praise, and that word davar is going to become very important in a few minutes. Davar. And be'elikim, halal davar. And whether it's overtly elokim, halal davar, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to always say, right? We should see ha-toiv, ha-nirav, ha-niglis. Everything is toiv, right? But to a person who's able to be conscious of the nirav, ha-niglis part, that's something else. That's called hishtavos. That's called equanimity. That's called, by the Baal Shem HaKadosh, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, which is something we've already mentioned prior, probably in the name of the Ma'arinayim, because that's where I saw it originally, but it's from the Baal Shem Tov, that Shivisi Havaya lenegdi, negdi is the Bechina of Elikim, right? That which is oppositional. And the Baal Shem Tov says, Shivisi, David HaMelech is on such a level where he says it's the same to me, whether I'm encountering Yud-Kei Vav-Kei or that which is negdi. It's the same. That's called hishtavos. That's the equanimity of a person who's a Baal Emunah, who's plugged into the essential factor in everything, which is Teva Tov Lehetiv, right? Which is Tov Hashem Lakol. The Gemara in Brachos makes a reference to this model in the life of David HaMelech in a different pasuk, which is Chesed u'Mishpat Ashira. Whether David HaMelech was experiencing Chesed, whether he was experiencing Mishpat Ashira, he was praising Hashem because he understood that it's all part of a process. And that ultimately, everything ends in the best possible way. Ends in a way of tikkun. How is a person supposed to get to that madrega where they're able to identify HaKadosh Baruch Hu in everything, both in the positive moments and in the more difficult, challenging, negative moments? Says the Rebbe two things. Al Yedei HaTorah and Nikra Shalom. Through Torah, that's called Shalom, but we're going to learn it's a very specific kind of Torah. Going to get to that later in the week. Kamada Atama, like the pasuk says, V'chol Nesivayseha Shalom. So we see that the Torah is intended to bring about not just peace, like people learn Talmidei Chacham Barim Shalom Ba'olam. First of all, it's the biggest joke in the world, obviously, because it's not true. Right? That's why Rabbi Jacobson says that's how you know the Torah has a good sense of humor. Right? It says Talmidei Chacham bring peace to the world. Right? But obviously, it's a deeper thing, right? Because it means that Torah is supposed to bring about a unified consciousness within the person. Marbe Shalom Ba'olam means, you can interpret the word Olam as Halem, right? Marbe Shalom, even in the Halem, even when things are hidden, it's equal, right? Because they see the totality of reality, but ultimately it's an inner process. V'chol nesivayseha Shalom. So that's number one, but we're going to learn about what kind of Torah. It's a very specific revelation of a hasaga of Pnimius HaTorah, as we're going to see. Al Yedei Tzaddikim, and by way of the Tzaddikim, Shenikru Gamkin Bris Shalom, who are also called in the context of Pinchas, right, who receives from HaKadosh Baruch Hu Bris Shalom, and you see the connection between Bris and Shalom, Bris being tzaddik, Shalom, it's not going to explode or anything, right? That's just, okay, right? So we see the connection between Bris is tzaddik and Shalom is the Indian of peace. And that was given to Pinchas. Pinchas is Eliyahu, Malach HaBris. So you see the concept of Shalom in correlation to the concept of tzaddik as well. But tzaddik, Yesod Olam, and obviously Yesod is connected to the concept of Shalom. When a person has exposure to these two realms of influence, which is in text and embodied, a Torah of Shalom and tzaddikim who project a consciousness of Shalom, and a person has those two elements in their lives, machma zeh yachol, and here he uses an interesting lashon. We're going to come to this lashon again. Lehoiv es hashalom b'chol makom. He can come to love the Shalom in every place. Heim b'tivu b'chulu, heim ba'aku, whether it's a positive moment or a negative, difficult moment. And then v'yachaliyah Shalom bein Yisrael, then ultimately when a person has their own inner world together and they're living from a place of anchoredness, rootedness, and a person isn't constantly in reactivity, but a person is living out of a place of calm, centered, anchored, then there can be Shalom between people. Liyah Shalom bein Yisrael v'le'oiv zeh zeh, and you can come to love someone else. Because what's the most common reason to not love somebody else is opposition. Is when that person is in opposition to me, when that person feels differently than I do, when that person is acting in ways that don't align with my personal, hasaga of what my day is supposed to look like. This person's getting in the way. But a person who lives out of emunah, out of a place of mamish, shalom, like we're speaking about, so then you're able to find within that even though this is a higher level, because it isn't just a circumstance, it's someone else's bechira. And it's true the Gemara says, right? But at the end of the day, there's no chayiv, right? Even the chayiv that it says, there's no chayiv and there's no chayiv. Because ki gavar aleinu chazdai, right? There is no such thing that isn't chesed. There's no such thing that's the cloud. There's no such thing that isn't chesed. Because everything's elokus, as we're going to see in a minute, and everything is for our benefit. Some things are overt, and some things are to teach us lessons. And some things are to send us down into darkness so that from there we can find, the strength not to lose hope. And in so doing, we return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu having illuminated those places, whatever it is. But that's the klal in Chassidus. The Baal Shem only saw tov, right? By the Baal Shem, there's nothing else. There's tov, and then there's a lower level of tov that people call ra. But ultimately, it's just because we're not on the level to be able to be conscious of how good it is. How mind-blowingly good it is. We're just not on the level. But if a person accesses Torah like this, which is called shalom, and tzaddikim like these that are called shalom, so then lehoiv es hashalom b'chol makayim, heim b'tivu, heim ba'akav yuchaliyos, shalom bein Yisrael, then a person can come into alignment with other people, and genuinely come to love and to respect others, no matter what. Okay, this is the opening salvo of concepts, right? Shalom, Bein Yisrael, Shalom b'midosav b'ma'iraisav, Torah hanikra Shalom, and Tzaddikim anikraim bris Shalom. Now we come to a really remarkable paragraph. What's remarkable is that this is Lashon Rabbeinu, and the teachings are usually so not, and he writes this like Rav Nosson. He writes this is like flowing. Listen to this. I can't think really a few. But this is a very rare kind of text from Rabbi Nachman himself. Oisbeis. If a person needs to understand that the whole earth is saturated with Hashem's presence, with Hashem's shechina, with Hashem's kavod. And there is no place that's devoid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu saturates all of reality and surrounds all of reality. Those two terms mean different things in the worlds of the Tanya and the world of the Nefesh HaChaim. Not getting into that now, but at the end of the day, it all equals. Right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is everywhere and in everything. And even someone who happens to be a Chabad Shliach, just for example, in somewhere so far away as China, just for example, right? It's just totally coincidental to any real life circumstances. Even a person who's so far away that they're mamish, they're with Akum the whole time. It's a person who, okay, that was a cute example, but obviously that's different. But a person who's the whole day in the office, right, with the Ein Yehudim the whole day. A person who lives, we were learning in a Sichos Haran Shir about one of Rabbi Nachman's Talmidim who had to travel for whatever family reason into the middle of a place where there was only 1 in 1,000 were Yidden, and of those Yidden, how many were from? He was mamish, no minyan, no mikvah, no shul, no anything, and he had to live there for 3 years for whatever family circumstance. A person who's mamish, devoid, right, in a place that's totally seems to be devoid of kedusha. Says the Rebbe, Lo Yachalis Natzav Eloimar I'Ev Shalavet Hashem Yisbarach Machmas Obvious V'Gashmius. That person doesn't have an excuse to say, I can't serve Hashem because there's obvious V'Gashmius. All I hear the whole day is stocks, and all I hear the whole day is is finance, and I'm not able to connect to Elokus. Shenoifel Tamid Alav Machmas Eisek Sha'isek Tamid Imayim, because he's constantly immersed in that other culture. There's no such thing. Chazal have already taught us that in all dvarim, all physicality, and in all of the languages of the Umas Ha'olam, you can find Elokus there. Unbelievable thing. L'shaynais. We're going to get there in a minute. We're going to see. Right? But what does limtzai connote? Searching, right? Yagati umatzasi. If you're miyageya, and if you yourself are plugged into Emunah consciousness, There's no, like that mashal from the Baal Shem Tov with the walls, the optical illusion. There are no walls. There are no walls, right? That's what I said about the beware of dog signs, right? When there's no dog in the house. It's not real. There's no walls.
Also, Nikula Toiva, the Torah is all about to be moitze, limtzoi, and Nikula Toiva, to take it out.
Same thing.
And Torah Nunvav, Hashem is nimtza. He's
nimtza, beautiful, right? The same lashon.
Same.
You have
and
to.
it's also about Akum over there. And
Nachon. You have to search. Keep right. And how do you know that there's elukus there? Says the Rebbe, what do you think you're looking at when you look at a Chinese person? You're looking at elukus. You're looking at the letter Yud of Yud Kei Vav Kei. In Ezeshu way. Right? In Tanya, it gets complicated, different levels, and Shabbos, different things. That's one approach. But even within that approach, Daimim Sameach Chaim Medaber, across the board, is Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? So in Ezeshu Bechina, you're looking at mamish godliness. You're looking at Tzelem Elokim. You're looking at Chaviv Adam. There is, it's very simple. There is chayis in everything and in everyone. Levad, the only thing is it is extremely concealed, and that's what tzimtzum is. In the world of the Hasidim, tzimtzum is not kipshuta. It doesn't mean that Hashem actually, removed himself, chas v'shalom, a siluk. It is hidden. It's hidden. And paradoxically, the best formulation that I've ever seen of this is in Nefesh HaChaim, where he speaks about the hiddenness, right? And Mamish has a beautiful, beautiful page and a half where he speaks about tzimtzum as concealment. And Nefesh HaChaim famously, I hinted to it in a previous year, but we almost have majority Lubavitchers here, so I feel a little, but it says the Lubavitcher Rebbe felt, right? Rav Dessler felt differently, but Lubavitcher Rebbe felt that there was a clear break between the Nefesh HaChaim and the Gra, based on his presentation of tzimtzum and Nefesh HaChaim. That's mamish the same way the Baal Shem Tov would have said it, which is that there is no tzimtzum. It's hastara. And to the degree that a person knows, and that was the famous teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, when a person knows that Hashem is nister there, so that there's no hastara, because it's not an objective experience. It's a subjective transformation. And it depends not objectively on whether Hashem's here or not. It depends subjectively on whether I recognize that Hashem's here or not. And that's what he means here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is he's going to make this clear in a minute. I know what the end of the paragraph is, but trust me on it, but you'll see. He says, right now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Velikus has Hashem b'tzimtzum gadol uvemiyot. Hashem is hidden there, and therefore uvemiyot. Rak kedei chiyun alach yoser v'lo yoser. Right now, what's latent in that experience is godliness that's, let's say, just on the level of keeping that person alive. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzamtzim his Ein Sof within the process of creating the world in tzimtzumim rabim mishoinim, in so many different ways of concealment. From the Reishis HaMachshava, from the Indian of Keser Elyon, and then down and down and down in myriad ways, like in the Kisvei Arizal, Oitros Chaim, until the point where we are sitting here. This is the last link in a very, very long chain, right? We who are experiencing this room on this particular morning, in this particular country, right? In this dimion of reality that we're sitting here. That's called Nekudas HaMerkaz Shel Ha'olam HaGashmi Shesham Midar HaKlipas. We're in this realm, and it's full of klipas. It's full of shells. It's full of external coverings of the Elokus that is latent but concealed. Ubechol Masha Mishtal Shel Yoser. The more that Elokus is going from level to level, from R to Kli, Makif Pnim, everything that we've learned about in previous Torahs, Elokus Melubasham bin Malbushim Rabim Yoser. It's just there are greater and more intense layers, right? And that's the Baal Tanya's famous mashal, right? About the person hugging the king. He speaks about it from the standpoint of the Torah, right? He speaks about the Ratzon Hashem that's Melubish in the Torah. So there's no difference if you hug a king when the king is wearing 10 winter coats, when you hug a king when he's wearing his undershirt. It's the king. It doesn't matter. It's totally irrelevant how many layers are upon the king. Here, Rabbi Nachman applies that to all of reality. It's just, Hashem is just Melubasham, B'malbushim Rabim Yoser.
It's still Hashem.
But it's still Hashem. The question is whether we're aware of it or not. If a person should happen to walk down the street and bump into what he thought is just a pile of winter coats, not knowing that the king is in there, doesn't do anything for him. He doesn't have any experience of grandeur and royalty. He just thinks it's a big clump of clothes. But a person who walks by and sees the same clump of clothes, and for whatever bizarre reason, I don't know, the king is just having a hard day, or like, I don't know, he ends up in a whole heap of laundry, on the street. Gewalt. That's not a heap of laundry. And he shivers for instance, and he feels a sense of yira. Same heap of laundry, two different levels of awareness.
My father-in-law was going to be here listening to this, and he was very close to Rav Steinberg, who's Chazal, and he said,
good example.
He said when he met him, he went to his flat.
I was going to see him.
He went to his flat, and the Rebbetzin said he was in there. He walked in, and he walked out. He said, "He's not there."
No, she meant he's in there, like she's in the pile.
It was mamish a pile of clothes, and it was tiny. It's just he was the God of Hadar.
Pella.
Amazing.
Pella. Imagine that a person walks by and just sees a whole pile of tzitzis, doesn't know that there's a tzaddik in there, right? He wore lots of pairs of tzitzis.
But what he's implementing is that everywhere you go, there's a king hidden. That's very, very intense.
And also
that's called Shivisi Hashem. Let's see how he unfolds it. Okay. So this really is what Chazal opened up a doorway for us to be able to understand that a person who really understands how to learn Chazal and how to listen to the tenor of the words should understand what they're communicating beyond the words. Most people learn Chazal, they only learn the words. So they learn the words in the translation, they think they know the Gemara. That's not learning Chazal. You could know the translation, but what are they saying? That's what Hasidus means. But what do they really say? Okay, now you know the surface. But what do they mean? So the Rebbe says this is what Chazal meant. They were trying to teach us that Hashem's godliness is in everything. The Gemara seems to just randomly blur it out in the Gemara Menachas Lamadal and Beis discussing Tefillin. Tat bekaspi shtayim pas ba'afriki shtayim. They're trying to understand the word totafos. They said, what a strange word. There's no sharish in Lashon HaKodesh. Say Chazal, it means doubled over, like Tefillin, right? 2 and 2. Because pas in the language of Kaspi, right, is 2, and pas is the language of Afrique, which I don't think is connected to African. I read that somewhere. That means something else, whatever it is, but it means 2. So most people read that and they say, oh, interesting. Now I know what the word totafos means. Says the Rebbe, can't you hear what they're saying? Lo idea, can't you understand that what Chazal mean to say we think about how radical this is in our Torah, which is Torah Shebiksav. I mean, mamish, like the Torah, right? Hashem's mind. You have a word in there that's mamish, not Lashon HaKodesh. It's a goyish word. Tat pas becomes totafos, becomes one of the most important words that hint to us on the textual level what tefillin is supposed to be, because otherwise we don't know what tefillin is. We have right in the Messiah, but totafos, crucial word. Now just a second, just to explain a little bit more deeply. Why Daika here did Chazal choose to teach this to us? Or you can ask on a deeper level, why Daika here did the Torah choose to encode non-Jewish languages, which would seem to relate or refer to those experiences where godliness is apparently absent? Why Daika in Tefillin? Why Daika here? So it's possible to suggest that the hasaga of godliness, when it's revealed, is the hasaga of unity. It goes back to what we were saying about Shalom, right? To find Hashem in everything, meaning there is no duality, fundamentally. Right? And that's really the gilui of all of life, is to engage with this fundamental break of keser, kiviyachol, into chachma and bina, and then to put Humpty Dumpty back together. And that's what life is. on every single bechina, right? Whether it's male and female, right? V'hayu lebasar echad, v'haya mishkan echad, a very similar lashon when they brought all the different parts of the mishkan. Our job is to put things back together. Ma'ala, mata v'hayu la'achad and biyadi. That was what we spoke about with the lulav esrog, right? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. And so many different aspects of this mamish Torah and tefillah. We were learning in last Torah tzaddik and lamdin, versila, verstata, kedusha, and limanat Torah. Put everything together. This experience of godliness being hidden gives rise to fundamental categories of distinction and duality, where ultimately in its deepest hishtalshel is down into the olam hamaisa, which Rabbi Nachman calls over here the medar klipos from the Arizal, becomes a world of good and evil. Meaning it becomes a world of absolute negativity and absolute positivity, and the distinction between the two. Daika, the pasuk that's referring to l'shonos ha'akum, is going to use the word totafos, which is shtayim, because it's duality. It's duality, right? Tas, in two languages, this word means two, right? Meaning it's mamish duality, sheba duality. Paspa, friki shtayim, paspa, kasbi shtayim. And yet, that doubled over, it's like doubled over K, like the Mar Samach bit, that doubled over cave, gesundheit of 2 and 2, is actually referring to the 4 batim of our tefillin shel rosh, which is a keser on our Oiter Yisrael b'sifar. That's keser, the place from which all duality would appear to emerge. Tas, pas, shtayim. That's one thing. It's keser elyon, the tefillin shabarash. And the Rebbe is helping us to understand that whatever a person encounters in life, no matter how hidden godliness appears, as we're going to learn, we have to develop deeper eyes. The eyes of tzaddikim, Einei Hashem al tzaddikim, which we've been speaking about from the beginning, Yaakov Avinu consciousness, to look past the surface and to be able to discover HaKadosh Baruch was mamish there in the same way. So, okay, as he's going to say, there are more layers of garments. You have to just be able to look a little bit more deeply. And here comes a classic. I mean, this is mamish a classic. This is mamish classic Rabbi Nachman. This is what it says in the Gemara Yerushalmi Tainis Parak Aleph. If a person comes and asks you, where's your God? You should answer him counterintuitively, Bekrach Gadol Shebaraymi. You want to know where to find Hashem? Is in the greatest metropolis in Rome. Absurd. Because what should you say? Hashem is in the shul, Hashem is in the Beis Medrash, Hashem is by the Kehal, Hashem is by Kivrei Tzaddikim, Hashem is in Shemayim, right? What's this? You want to know where to find God? Times Square. You know, you go to the football stadium somewhere. Krach Gadol Shebaraymi. Shenemar quotes a pasuk, Elai Koyri Mi Seir. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls to me from Seir, which is Haresav. Okay, so again, a person reads this Gemara means one thing, which is still, it means to communicate something. And the lesson would be enough if Rabbi Nachman just quoted this Gemara. It would serve the purposes of this Gemara, because what's he mean to say? He's telling you that even in Krach Gadol Shebaharam, which is a person, is Masa Matan and Na'akum, where the Arab Lebushim, you can find Hashem there. But again, the Rebbe is trying to train us how to listen, not just to read and intellectually understand, how to listen to what Chazal are actually communicating. This is a classic example. Listen to how it's a whole different way of learning. Nimsa, says the Rebbe, emerges, he wants to know, who's asking you this? What kind of person bumps into you in the street and says, where's your God?
Take him to a therapy session.
Says the Rebbe, can't you hear what he's asking? He's not asking in the abstract. He's asking about himself. This person is bevade meshuka b'medar klipos. Ki ha'isias atzmim and aklal v'kafar be'ikr. Rabbi Nachman takes that as a given. He's a yid, right? Obviously. So he's coming over to say, where's your God? And that lashon is the same lashon that the Rasha in the Arba Banan in the Haggadah says, which we say ha'isias atzmim and aklal v'kafar be'ikr. Shamar heichan elikecha. Which is the same thing of what the Rosh and the Manishtana in the Haggadah says, right? Where he says, "Ma avodah zayis lachem v'loylay kivin shayis hasman akav kav beikar." Says the Rebbe, same thing here. He's saying heikan elikecha, but the Rebbe listens to another layer and says only because Gevalt he thinks that Hashem, that it's not his God. Again, this is a deeper layer than the Haggadah, because in the Haggadah we're just trying to show what a Rasha this guy is, that he's haiti his hatzman aklal kafar beikar. Says there, but yeah, can you listen deeper though? Can't you hear him crying out because he mamish feels that he no longer has a kesher with Hashem, and he's begging you, please, can you tell me Hashem is still with me? That's what he's asking. Heichan elekecha. Whole different world. Because it appears to him and he's asking for like some adverse confirmation of this, but Gevalt, he's really asking for you to protest, and that's exactly what you answer him. When you encounter a person like this, you have to tell him afilu b'mekoimcha. Even in your matziv, where you are, what you're struggling with, what you're stuck in. Sha'ata meshuka b'medar klipas. Okay, you probably have to use different language. Not the nicest thing to say to someone, right? Sha'ata meshuka b'medar klipas. That you, but again, it's subjective. That you feel that you're mamish stuck. Gam kein sham tuchalim selikusay. There's no such thing as a fundamental break from Elikuz. Hashem is being mechayu you there. Ku mechayas hakol. Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu is mechaya everything. K'moshe kasav ata mechaya as kulam. That word kulam is inclusive of everything, as it connotes. There's nothing that's outside of kulam. There can't be. Kulam means kulam. That's what it means. Everything. And in that place, even though it looks like a clump of laundry, we're using this mashal, right? A whole pile of garments. From wherever you are, it doesn't matter how many layers are preventing you from seeing this clearly. You can connect v'lashavi love b'tshuva shlema, and from there you can begin to repair the relationship. It's never ever broken. Klal Yisrael is only ever damsa lenida, and ma lenida, the Gemara says, right? There's a yesh heter, that in the end there's going to be a yichud again. Nafla loisaisiv, we will no longer fall. Kum besulas Yisrael. Ben kachu ben kach banahem, the shitas Reb Meir, that aligns with so many other shitas Reb Meir throughout the Gemara. That Reb Meir, Aiden, just stick around for this one. Reb Meir, right, is the shita in Kedushin that says ben kachu ben kach banahem, and we know that Reb Meir is also the shita of chayish l'miyuta. Reb Meir is always chayish for the miyat. What's the miyat? It's the nekuda taiva. Reb Meir, who's chayish l'miyuta, is ben kach banahem. There are many other teachings from Reb Meir that align. I'm not going to go into all of them. Maybe I'll give a share on that one day. But this is the meir, right? Is the nekuda taiva. That's meir. That's full of light. That's the shita of Reb Meir. Reb Meir is able to find that point to say, whatever, however, removed you think that you are, you can you can repair the relationship. You can change everything. You can go now. Just stay to the end of the paragraph.
That's the name of Rav Meir is the school for finding lost things.
Gewaldig, yeah, nachon. Yeah, that's beautiful and true. Because it's not distant from you. Ella, the only thing is, on your level of consciousness right now, Sham Rabu Halavushim, it comes with the territory. That because you're stuck in what you're stuck in, that comes with the perception and asaga of distance from Hashem. This was what the Ishbitzer, both the Me'ashilach, his grandson, the Beis Yaakov, says about his son, rather the Beis Yaakov, says in last week's Parsha about the Sulam of Yaakov Avinu. He says Yaakov Avinu's vision of the Sulam is our subjective experience of the spiritual journey, where Hine Melach Elikim Oilam Yarden. That's from our perspective. But V'hine Hashem Nitzav Alav. Klape Hashem's perspective, there's no up and down. There's no Hashem totafos. I mentioned in a previous year from the Baal Tanya, also in Torah R, the tzaddik says over there about tshuva being impossible because you're always close to Hashem. So you can't return to something that you were never distant from because, like the Rebbe is saying, so the Baal Tanya understands tshuva. It just means going from achar ba'achar to panim b'panim. You were always next to each other. There's no distance. It just means that maybe we were facing in opposite directions. The whole thing of tshuva, but tshuva only becomes possible when you realize there's still that essential closeness. Otherwise, that person will think, forget, there's no hope. But you tell a person, no, you're still so close. You're still so close. You're sitting back to back. All you need to do is just turn around. And Hashem is waiting. It's just that on your level right now, it looks like there are many, many, many garments. And the more that a person begins to travel from level to level, slowly but surely, the sun begins to shine. Layer after layer subjectively fall away, and he gets closer and closer to the king within the garments. And then a person can come to understand Hashem in a deeper way. Because the more elevated the madrega, you're climbing up through the process of tzimtzum, reverse engineering things, and as you rise, Hashem gets less and less and less hidden until you live in a world which is the same world as everyone else, but instead of seeing garments, you see Eibishter everywhere. Listen to this very strange lashon, which again we're going to see in a number of places, and I'll say a little bit more about it when we get to the end of the Torah. It's very, very unique lashon. You can come to love yourself with Hashem, ba'ava yisera, with an extraordinary level of ava, of love. What a strange thing, right? To love yourself with Hashem. To love Hashem with yourself. B'chlal, which sefer talk about loving yourself like that? You know, they have to love yourself, right? Also, but such a lashon, the lev is atzmai, to come to accept ourselves, to love ourselves, not to write ourselves off. Im Hashem Yisbarach. All of this, Eis is teaching us how to come to the consciousness of Eis Aleph, which is Shalom. Because when a person encounters duality of tat, pa, shtayim in two languages, and is able to recognize that all of this is totafos, is keser elyon, so then that's called Shalom b'midosav, b'ma'iraisav, and Shalom b'nei Adam. This is what the Baal Shem Tov wanted, that Yidden should first see Hashem as the true essence of reality, and then to see everything else. That means that a Yid who wakes up in the morning with this perspective begins with the assumption that there's already a universal element in everything. Before encountering anything, in everything, there's already sameness, because Atamachayas Kula. The avoida, as a person goes through their day, right? Especially people who aren't great tzaddikim, like, I think all of us are striving and trying. We're on this emunah journey, but it's very difficult because Rabbi Aklipas, this is the Madar Aklipas, the whole world wants to hide this reality, is to hold on to this consciousness for long enough when we encounter life to be able to access it and allow that to unify our own emotions and bring things into balance instead of things flying out of whack in response to a world that appears to be flying out of whack, right? And then we lose ourselves and we fall into extreme frustration, extreme anger, extreme indignance, extreme sense of disappointment, extreme anguish or despair or sadness. That's not Shalom. That's not Shalom. And the reason that we do that is because we're just mirroring what appears to happen in the world around us. We mirror extremes with extremes. But when a person is able to bring all of reality into some sense of proximity as a result of really being like establishing a chayk deep in one's heart and mind that the truth is it's just Hashem. And toiv Hashem lakol and tamuru uki toiv Hashem. And Hashem is good. And Hashem wants the best for me. And Hashem wants the best for the world. And I don't really understand anything. I'm just a child in an adult body. Klape Hashem. I don't know what the plan is. And one day will be revealed, and azim alischayk pinu and vatischak liam achron, and then we'll laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh forever. And we'll have ever increasing mind-blowing revelations of the Giluyim of what happened in this lifetime and what happened in this place. We, like I say sometimes, we are going to sit and we're just going to hold each other and laugh and laugh and laugh. And we're going to reminisce about a time when our consciousness was so constricted that we didn't understand anything. When we can bring things into proximity and make shalom bein ma'ayroisav, then there's shalom b'midosav. Because then there's no part of me that's like falling below a certain threshold of feeling because it's not appropriate in terms of its mirroring of what's happening externally. Because what's happening externally is not as extreme as it appears. And so my reaction is not as extreme as one would assume. And then there's shalom. And that is a result of being able to hold on to these teachings. Okay, let's push forward a little bit into Gimmel. Like I said, it's a little bit more flowing than the other teachings. And the Rebbe goes a level deeper. And he says like this, Vihine. Yesh shnei minei yamin. There are two kinds of days. There's Yimei Toiv and there's Yimei Ra. There are good days and there are bad days. K'moisha Kasav, as the pasuk says in Kehal, is B'yoim Toiva Heye B'Toiv. On a good day, enjoy. Heye B'Toiv, relax. B'yoim Ra'a Re'eh. And on a bad day, Re'eh means, al pi Chazal, to reflect. Obviously, Hashem is sending a message. Something's going wrong. Re'eh. So a person should contemplate what's going on and why. Rabbi Nachman understands this differently. I know what this means is, what should a person do b'yom ra'ah? Says the Rebbe, it just means look a little bit deeper. Hainu shetzarech la'adam lehistakel sham heitev heitev bevada yimtza sham yimei toiv. Hainu Torah. So b'yom toiv heye b'toiv. That's toiv hanira v'aniklis. B'yom ra'ah. Right? Re'eh. Go find the toiv. That's what it means. Find the good day beyond the shadow of the bad day. Find a lakus there.
You got the lutzos.
That's right. A person needs to be miyageh, and then they'll find it. Hainu Torah. And says the Rebbe, well, what does it mean to find goodness? How does HaKadosh Baruch Hu interface throughout reality? So we already learned totafos was language. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shows up in holy language, even in unholy places. And that is through the medium of the Torah K'dashah. So how do we know? What's the link between good days, bad days, and Torah? So the Rebbe says, Yamim nikreim midos. Yamim are called midos, measurements. K'moisha Kasav u'midas yamai mahi. David HaMelech refers to the length of his days with the word measurement, right? Because the whole inyan of days is it starts at a specific time, it ends at a specific time. It's the most fundamental unit of time, right? Is a day. And then we go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, we start anew. That's a midah. Ha'amidah is Hema Torah. All midas fundamentally come from the Torah. We know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah, it's all Hashem's midas. The Torah is constantly allowing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the Ein Sof, that les machshava tfisa beklal. It's through the Torah Kedosha that Hashem manifests in the midas. Midas HaChesed, Midas HaDin, Mitzvahs Aseh, Mitzvahs Lois Aseh, the Hisparis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Gvura of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Uba bara Kadosh Baruch Hu almin. And it is with the letters of the Torah, letters being Malchus, like we learned about in previous lessons, Malchus being a world of constriction and limitation and specificity. That's the inyan of Dibor, Klapi Kol, because we learned that Kol, which is the Midah Tiferes, is Klalius. Dibor, right, Hamelech, is the inyan of specificity, is where Kol is channeled into specific words that cannot be undone. That's what the words are. And that's what the Oisius of the Aleph Beis are, which is all Torah. Uba bara Kadosh Baruch Hu almin, and it is with the Torah that a Kadosh Baruch Hu created the world. This is the Chazal I was looking for the other day. I was, it's the Torah speaking, a nursling to our Kadosh Baruch Hu, amain, like a nursing baby. And say Chazal in the Bereshis Rabbah and in the Zohar Kadosh, al tikri amain ela aman. Don't read it that the Torah was a nursling of Hashem. Rather, read it. Aman is a material of craft. Aman. Like an uman, right, as a craftsman. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used the Torah to create the world. And therefore says the Rebbe's Chusya Gnalenu, Va'oisius HaTorah Heima Mechayim is called Davar B'Davar. It is the letters of Torah that give life to everything. Right? In the Bechina, Va'ata Mechayis Kulam, as the Baal Tanya explains it, which is Va'ata, says the Baal Tanya, that the Hey of Ata is the Hey Moitzais HaPeh, or the whole Aleph base is split into 5 different categories of speech, right? The lip letters, the tongue letters, the teeth letters, the palate letters, the throat letters, the chulei. And then Aleph and Taf is the letters of the Aleph base, right, from the beginning and end. So the Baal Tanya says, Ve'ata mechayas kulam is not just telling us that Hashem is in everything, it's telling us how Hashem is in everything. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzamsim alikusi yisbarach into the midos, which are the letters, which is the Torah Kedosha, that are in everything. Heim hamachayin es kol davar v'davar. Ela kol mashem madrega hilamata. It's just that the more the madregas are lower down, and a person is encountering external circumstances where Hashem is more hidden, or in addition, a person's consciousness is a little bit lower, and so they're not able to perceive the godliness there. It's just smaller letters, right? And again, not spatially, but it's just more constricted letters. And that's what's happening in those locations. And they're not as shining as they are in the upper levels of reality. Why? For a very specific reason. Because there can be more godliness, because there's klipos there. If there was more godliness, guess what else would happen? There would be even more concealment. Right? Because the klipos will take whatever chiyus is being given, and they'll use that to make it look even more vital, right? And even more vibrant and even more alive, when we know that the klipos there's nothing. They have no chiyus of their own at all.
They have a facade, they don't have a back end.
That's right. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to be very careful about, so to speak, how much elokus is in that place. And the letters are more constricted. Nimsad emerges that afilu b'medar klipas, even in this world, and even in no matter what circumstance a person finds themselves in, no matter what, it doesn't matter how distant from Kedusha the place appears. Hainu b'meira, she'im midos ra'is u'l'shoynes akum, even in the dark days, which means even in days where a person seems to be completely disconnected from Kedusha, at least overtly. You can find Oisiyas Atayra in everything. You can find messages from Hashem in everything. You can find Elokus, Mamish in everything. It's just a matter of our perspective. But a person can never say, I'm so distant, I'm so disconnected. There's no disconnect. It's just that, again, because of the constriction, you can't see the letters. The letters are not so apparent. You can't find the goodness hidden behind the challenges. You can't find, right, the chesed of Hashem that's hidden behind the apparent chabura. Because of the levusha. But a person who does the inner work of sublimating the Yetzer Hara, and a person goes through the process of iskafia, right? And a person is ishapcha. Finally, they manage to go ahead and to find a way to realize that all of their negative midas are hainuhach, meaning they themselves are mamish positive energy. They just need to be channeled and elevated and integrated. So then, to such a person, doing the inner work enables them to change their perspective on the world around them. When that person encounters such a circumstance, the whole thing shifts, the whole thing changes. Such a person is able to find elokus in everything. Originally, they weren't so shining. Because they were not, it wasn't possible to give them too much because it would be too dangerous. Right? Because we didn't want the klipas to be able to draw more on the revelation of godliness there and to channel it to a negative place. But the Achav, and again, this is a totally subjective experience. It's happening in his head, in his mind. The Achav shenis batal hara, when a tzaddik comes along and looks at something with the eyes of a tzaddik, right, which is called Eine Hashem el tzaddikim, and he looks at the same experience, the same circumstance, the same current events as everybody else, he can actually bring about, just by virtue of his perspective, he can bring about a transformation of that circumstance. Because to him, there is no klipa. There's no klipa. Wow, the letters are reevaluated. Why are we giving so little chiyas? We have to give so much more. And shefa comes down mile'ela that can actually go ahead and transform the circumstance. We're going to end here, but this, I believe, is the underpinning, not under the hood of Rabbi Nachman's famous teaching of the Nekuda Taiba. But the Rebbe says famously that if a person finds, even in Afilamishu Rasha Gamor, but a person's able to identify what's called the Nekuda Taiva, a Ma'at Taib Shasham Eina Rasha, Yuchalach Zir L'Tshuva. You can help a person do tshuva just by, you didn't do anything. All you did is you refused to believe that this person is totally cut off. You refused to believe, even in a Rasha Gamor, that there's a part of him that's mamish not a Rasha Gamor, even if the rest of him is. And the Rebbe says that can actually bring about a legitimate, real change and transformation in that person's life, just because you looked at him in a way where you helped him see his holiness. And all of a sudden, the gates open, the letters expand, and Shefa Rav is Yared Min Lamala.
Everything is a Shefa.
Yeah.
So you started today on Gimmel and talking about the duality of the Shalom, that is the Yotz of the Basai. Something very powerful. He says, we say, Esh Shalom in Bereimov, Hu Yas Shalom Aleinu, Ba'akol Yisrael. So he said, if Aleinu is not Ba'al Yisrael, who is it? So he answers and he says that we say to the Esh Shalom in Bereimov between Michal and Gabriel. Eish, Mayim, Chesed, Gevura. Hu Yas Shalom Aleinu, our Yitzatei, Yitzahara. And if you're able to do that, you can have between two people, which is what the Nachman starts off by saying. He says, "Bein betivui, bein be'aku." That's the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, and at the end of that, as he says, "Yachali Shalom bein Yisrael."
Yafa. So
האב שלי מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני